Hello, everyone. It's Danny with Skin Harmonics, the very first system that addresses root cause when it comes to acne, aging, and skin health. And today I want to share some clips from the class that my friend and colleague and client Emily Abbott gave a few days ago called Deep Dermal Nourishment. It's part of a three-part class that she's giving, and the next one is called The Goddess Lives in the Jaw, addressing jaw tension, which is something that just doesn't get enough attention. So it was really hard for me to edit this class down, and I tried to leave some good parts that would make you each feel as if you were there with us. And the way that I've set these newsletters up is that you can read through them, and you can also just press play and play these newsletter videos as you go about your day, as you have to take a drive or take a walk. And it's just my way of sending nourishment and good information and love to each of you. Enjoy.
Yeah, totally. Again, really beautiful that you're sharing that so vulnerably. We can definitely explore more of these options and how to really begin to interface with our extracellular matrix, our dermal layer, and ultimately our emotional space, which far too often for the women that I work with, this is largely denied and ignored. So I actually just want us to drop in right now, taking a deep breath in, closing our eyes, good, and then placing your hand, cupping your face, just holding the beauty of you. Really nourishing with your own touch, with your own breath, to come into the softening, melting, opening relationship with the skin that you have been gifted. The body is always giving you messages. That all of you begins in the psyche, in a concept, in the formless. Taking a breath in, feeling your hands against your face. And when was the last time you held her like this? Sighing out. Good. Good. And just slowly coming back to this space. So I just wanted to briefly talk about my skin journey. When I hit puberty, I began to break out a lot. I had blackheads, I had pimples. And my mother, with the best intentions, began to take me to this lady named Ricky at some nail salon back in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where I'm from. And she was just this old school Jewish lady from the old country. And she lovely lady, but she was very like blunt and upfront and just basically started to say not very good things about the state of my skin. And she would often like scoff and tisk and hum and haw as she picked at my skin, incredulously asking me like what I was eating, how I was washing my skin, and with what. And, maybe I was eating too many greasy foods and telling me it must be my genetics. And my mother would also pick at my skin, and I would become upset when she would do that. And then she would become upset. And like it was the ultimate gaslighting exchange. And my mother was just trying to help, but this conditioning really set in about my skin from that early age that it was problematic. It was too oily, it was too dry, it needed constant work and upkeep. And that story lasted throughout my teens and my 20s, and then into my late 20s, I began to show signs of some early aging. Um, Obviously, I was like working out and pushing and performing my body at the highest levels I could in this sport called CrossFit. And I really began to feel like I hit this crossroads of like, well, I guess I'm resigned to the fact that like Botox and filler are really the only path, um, particularly as the women in my family were all getting these types of treatments. And as well as like laser resurfacing treatments. So it's just like, I guess this is how it is for women. And I began to feel actually like a little bit hopeless, and because I guess this was the way. But there's something deep inside of me that, after I tried my first Botox session, um, that like injecting a needle into my face just didn't feel okay for me. I had spent so many years pushing past pain in order to be good enough in this sport, also in my basketball career. And I just didn't want to push past more pain in order to like maintain some level of beauty so that I could be like feel relevant. And I just truly, truly disliked my skin. And then I found Danny at Skin Harmonics. And the most amazing thing was like the first thing she told me was my skin was beautiful. And no esthetician had ever said that to me. And she really began to show me the underbelly. She just actually straight up told me the underbelly of the medical skincare industry and what these procedures are doing to our most precious layer of our body, the dermis, which also, as I began to research this area, holds an ancient intelligence. And I'm not here to be a purist. I'm just here to ask larger questions around the conventional beauty care industry. So the ECM actually, within the dermis, extracellular matrix, precedes any part of our evolutionary body. It was like the first thing that was created. And the dermis is this membrane that formed is part of the old mesoderm, or called the middle germ layer of the body of our evolution, from our early organistic ancestors. The ECM is the primal organ system, and life really began in this great mother ocean of antiquity. And the ECM was formed through an organism enclosing a drop of seawater. So our entire being and her continual regeneration takes her cues, her messages from the extracellular matrix. And the ECM is super sensitive to all these changes in levels of hormones, CSF components, nutrient changes in the cerebral spinal fluid. And this is all what comprises this whole matrix. It's really in touch with every function of your body on the vegetative, vital, and cellular level. So your central nervous system and your ECM are in constant communication, meaning that your central nervous system and your entire body are in constant communication. And your ECM ultimately determines the expression of genes within every cell of your body. And it's known now that we are in a constant state of regeneration. Our stomach lining regenerates every 5 days. Our tongue is about every day. Our entire cellular structure in our body, including our outermost skin, is restructures in an entire year. So how important does this second layer of our body become? And even too, you can see like with our endocrine system, all of our endocrine system lines up with the chakra system. So it's like there is this beautiful blending of science and spirituality that humans are really beginning to engage in. And this is a big basis of my work, which has gone into the emotional realms, the unseen realms, the psyche of the woman. So when we're holding in a specific way, the ECM is our emotional waters. It's holding specific patterns, and that is expressed through the fascia, causing a wrinkle, a pimple, tension headaches, jaw pain, and aging. And your fascia acts as this translator between the ECM and the rest of your body. And so we also know that lymph is housed in the fascia, and lymph drains are really important to continue. They need movement throughout the body. And this is why I teach self-myofascial release of and massage of breast, belly, vulva, pelvic diaphragm, the levator ani that are within the pelvis, as well as feeling how to touch your own ligaments. And we'll be diving into some fascial maneuvers in a little bit, before we hand it over to Danny, of the face, head, and neck, so that you can feel the movement or the opening of fascia in your own head, your own neck, allowing that ECM to free flow, which impacts lymph, CSF, and blood flow. And so really we're going into emotional cleansing and nourishment. So emotions, remember, they need to move in the body. It doesn't need to be denied. It's not doing emotional cleansing doesn't mean you'll never feel fear or sadness or guilt or any of those things. But they're really important to presence and to get to know the textures of them in your own body and how it lives in your body. And unfortunately, we live in or maybe fortunately, I don't know, we live in an emotionally lidded culture. And I find this burden particularly lies on the woman and the little girls and how to behave a specific way. For little boys and men too, obviously, but we're just addressing women in this class. And all this energy, when it's not expressed, it's held within our tissues. Every time we swallow down an emotion or curtail them or make them wrong in order to maintain harmony in our surrounding, like I talked about last class, these emotional reservoirs build up in the extracellular matrix, which then informs our fascia and then informs our outward expression. So as we learn how to drop through our emotional layers, our emotional reservoirs, we can come into a much more cosmically open space that feels clear, uplifting, like a deep knowing. And so I'm not here to talk about traditional detox pathways because that is it's like very simple. If that's something you want to learn. Again, if you look back into the Chinese 5 element system, every organ has a specific time of year, and it's a time to really pay attention to it. So for the lungs, right now we are in the fall. It's like this reckoning, this discerning, and we're moving into kind of the dead of winter, which is the time of the kidney, which is all emotions. And so can we give ourselves the space, this cycle, to really go into the depths of what I would call like the dark goddess work and begin to feel and begin to emote and open that up. And I'm coming from a background where I thought feelings were like a bad thing, and I would just clench down, I would work harder, I would go harder. I would think people who were crying were weak. And now I'm like the sigh queen and creating feeling space back in my little room here, like almost every day as a ritual. So what I spoke about last class was really focusing on creating feeling space every day, making that a ritual for yourself. It can be 5 to 10 minutes of feeling into the body and really honoring what's alive and present.
We aren't the things that we've been forced to hold by society and by our families, as the roles of women is often being the scapegoat. We're lower hierarchy, so things like the dumping ground that a lot of women historically have, that role that we've been forced to play, as a matter of survival for the entire species. But waters do run clear, and it certainly has become physically true as I've worked with skin and been able to detox the most severe acne anybody had ever seen. I mean, those people often end up with me because they've tried everything and it's a last ditch effort. And they're like, well, I'll just try this crazy lady over here doing this like strange thing out of the box. And lo and behold, we can get them there. There's this forgiveness, like self-forgiveness, that must happen when we approach new patterns and when we try to shift tracks. I mean, we all have had so much negative self-talk that we've all had to work through. And for me, this lifetime, it has to do with beauty. And like, so I've had to purify a lot in my life around the beauty principle. And so much of that has gone back to negative self-talk about why didn't I do that? Like, how am I not good enough? Feeling attacked, that exercise that you just brought us through. Like, the thing that came up for me was never being good enough, sensitive to criticism because there's so much efforting. And we have to just have so much compassion for ourselves and each other, because we have to look at some really dark things. I had to look at all the years that I chemical peeled people, all the years that I gaslighted people and myself, like everything that I pulled myself through as a woman. And then for the years that I went to school and drank all that Kool-Aid and was trying all that on, how many salicylic pills did I give that just completely threw people's skin off balance? And it was like, I just had to learn. What's happening with your skin is being echoed in your life. And this is why I think
Mhm.
beauty is so powerful, because we can recognize these patterns. A lot of it's the only way that we will ever really see ourselves or know ourselves in any way is if when that pattern becomes so big and it's so out there in our lives, but it's emanating, like, I'm convinced that I'm doing everything to myself. It's like the good news and the bad news. But these patterns can be completely changed. And it's also unfair for you to judge your skin if it hasn't had access to these right actions. Well, of course, your skin is behaving this way. Of course, it's irritated. It's a learning. There's a new learning and new patterns that have to be learned, which are totally learnable. And then the physicality will change. You will get moist, you will get hydrated. The dermal nutrients bring a lot of glow, a lot of health. Come let me get the texture of your skin perfected. And from that place where your skin is sustained and nourished with food, water, protection, barrier restoration, then you can see where you want to go from there, and maybe a few garnishing of sprigs in these other realms, perhaps. But is what's happening now is women are reaching for the Botox and for those injections and all of these shortcuts that actually decrease skin health. And they're a ticking time bomb. And we want to look good when we're 60, 70, 80. We think we're not going to care, but I promise you we will. We're all working out our issues, right? With beauty, with aging, and it shows up in our skincare practices and in our beauty practices. And may, great goddess have compassion on all of us as we're in this deep process of self-acceptance and, learning to not abandon ourselves, essentially. And this plays out in the theater of the beauty industry everywhere. And we can change that. We do our best, we resource our skin as best as we can in these very specific ways that are time tested for me, that actually matter. And then we go smell the flowers. We laugh, we go and do these things that are good for us, because we cannot stop aging. And it's kind of hard and sad when you see women in their 80s or 90s, like, hanging on to, what they look like in their 30s. Like, I want to just glow. I'm going to have wrinkles. I already do. I just want to be healthy, and I want my wrinkles to glow, and I want to be as moist as possible up until the day I die, and doing something that I love. Our skin is very much, it's like our skin is the lantern of our soul that way, ultimately. And while we're here, our skin is our lantern for that which cannot be bought or sold. And we can learn practical ways to support it all the way while we're alive, and carry on with those kind of self-care rituals with a lot of intelligence and a lot of specificity about what we're putting on our skin.
I actually work with a lot of women in their 50s and 60s because there's been the stories, the subconscious patterning that as you enter into crondom, it'll look like the hag. It'll look like dried up. It'll look like not relevant. But from the teachers I've had, one, your pleasure and your sensitivity as a woman who's entering into menopause actually increases. Your ability to have cervical pleasure increases. And I've seen this in women that I've worked with. And even specific parts of their cervix begin to come online. So it's actually a very juicy time. They call it a juicy green crondom, because we need women like yourself, Elizabeth, who are curious and who are like, yeah, that was traumatizing, to step into this different path. And secondly, when a woman will never lose her relevancy when she is connected, deeply connected to her desire. This is why I created this class, because there are women like you who are gorgeous and are stunning and are radiant, and we just need to remember that, and then be supported with the nourishing life practices that can like help us remember the essence that's right there. That is the most magnetic and the most compelling and deeply entrenches you in this oracular truth as a woman. And what Danny was saying, like returning us to sustainability. And so choose a different path. But as Danny said, and this is like why tears come up, is like I feel tranquility. I feel peace in that. And like my skin is just like, oh, like it's feeding, it's like it's for the first time in my life, like truly being nourished and fed. And it's such a vital path. So I just wanted to share that. Like, I feel you. And um, this path of diving deep into the emotions, diving deep into rewriting these narratives around femininity and womanhood and aging womanhood is done by the woman like you who's asking questions and seeking different paths.
So I've always felt like putting all the potions and doing all the stuff on the outside isn't ever really going to solve it anyway, because it's really from within, and both emotional but also like liver health. I mean, the skin is a huge detox
I think
pathway.
it's
So
both. I think it's both. I mean, we are on all realms. And so absolutely reset microbiome, work with your emotions like 100%. And in a really practical, gross level, you really can hydrate your skin. You really can feed it. You really can restore the barrier. Those are like
from the outside, you mean
from the
from
outside. Yeah. I
so
mean, and you can't get that healing response when our skin is traumatized, inflamed, anxiety ridden, dehydrated, and lacking of dermal nourishment. It's impossible. Like I tried all those methods for multiple years doing all that stuff, and the skin goes into like a hold down shock trauma response. Like it turns into the baby deer that freezes, right? It goes into a freeze state in a holding pattern. It's sleeping until we reawaken it, give it all of these things, and there's this beautiful exiting of everything that to me, it's a gorgeous process because I know what's to come. It's kind of hard to go through with people that have skin that's very out of alignment with very congestion. That reconciliation that happens can be really intense because there's a complete alignment and realigning that's taking place around food, around dermal nourishment, hydration, barrier restoration. The skin is completely reorganizing itself around those elements, and the expression is completely different. It's like restoring land. Like when we restore our skin, it's land restoration in this little in the mini fractals that we are. I would love to buy land and heal the land with everything, but until I have that kind of money, I'm doing it one pore and one face at a time. Interesting process that took me a long time to figure out, and everybody has a different way of going through it, but it's all doable. I found a way to get everybody that starts it, all the way through. Yeah.
Let's make sure that tonight we just maybe look at in the mirror. I invite you to look in the mirror for 5 minutes and just really say hello to your face, send her love. Just know that the relationship now changes. Like we're remembering, we're coming back